Good evening, Western Standard viewers, and welcome to Hannaford, a weekly politics show of the Western Standard. It is Thursday, March the 19th. In just 9 days' time, the NDP is meeting in Winnipeg to choose a new leader. The pointed issue is really whether anybody cares. Let's face it, the last leader they had didn't do so well. Destroyed the party, some people say. So whoever it is going to be is going to have their hands full. But with me today is somebody who does still care, and that's Josh Andrus. Josh is the new director of operations at the Western Standard. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thanks for having me, Nigel. It's awesome to be here.
Well, be interested to hear what you got to say. Now, Josh here comes to us from the government of Alberta. He was a staffer, a policy advisor to Dale Nally, who was the red tape reduction minister. And of course, the joke around the offices, that's probably part of why Derek hired him. Got to get rid of the red tape around the Western Standard, right?
I agree.
Amen. Josh, you were also executive director for Project Confederation. What was that all about?
Yeah, so Project Confederation was born out of what I felt were a series of frustrations towards the federal government in Alberta. I think we've seen the genesis of that in the recent independence referendum, citizen-initiated referendum process that's been initiated by, I think it's what do they call themselves? The Alberta First.
You're supposed to know this.
That's a good point. Mitch Sylvester, Dennis Modry, and a group are going out and collecting signatures. But
I knew you knew.
The concept was that, that I think there's a lot of people that are fed up with being in this country and are going to vote to leave no matter what. I think the issue that a lot of people have is what happens if that vote doesn't go the way that Sylvester and company think it's going to go. And I think when you look at the overall picture of Western alienation in this country, there's a series of things that are happening. Now, I don't work on the file anymore, obviously, because I am here now. But that is a definite tone as we head into the next year. We'll maybe see a vote in October. I don't know what exactly the date will be, but so Project Confederation was kind of more geared towards the people who are frustrated with the state of affairs that aren't quite prepared to vote to leave tomorrow.
All right.
So that was the idea there. So it was built on the principles of the Reform Party, which was run by Preston Manning in the 90s, as well as the famous firewall letter signed by Stephen Harper, Ted Morton, Ken Bosencool, Andy Crooks, and I think I'm missing someone. But that was the concept. And I eventually did move into government. So I worked there for the last year. My last minister was Dale Nally, the Minister of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction. So I had a great time in there, but I wanted to get back into Calgary and I wanted to come down here. So Derek put an offer on the table and I said, yeah, I'm coming back. So I'm happy to be back. Absolutely.
Well, I must say, Josh, you bring with you a pretty solid resume. I know you're going to be a great addition to the office around here. Having that experience, not only in public policy, but also in government. And of course, you're very familiar with what we do here at the Western Standard. So just as an aside, welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Now, tell us about the NDP and why you think that it matters who they choose for a leader and what happens next.
So I don't actually think it matters who they choose as leader. I think that the NDP are in a precarious political position. They are going to have a new leader no matter what, someone without a huge public profile. They've also seen their polling numbers bleed to the Liberals. We saw it during the election where their popularity of their vote share absolutely collapsed against the Liberals. I don't think it matters who they put at the top, whether it be Avi Lewis, Heather McPherson, or any of the other three candidates. I think that the Liberals are essentially eating the NDP, and I think that puts them in an incredibly precarious position as we move into the next few months here. So, yeah, that kind of brings me to, I guess the question is what happens over the next couple of months? Do the Liberals take advantage of these strong polls? We've seen recent polls from Abacus Data and Liaison Strategies that show the Liberals with a commanding 11 to 14 point lead over the Conservatives. the Liberals don't want a strong NDP leader. So I think the question on that I'd like to really get into is, do the Liberals call an early election? Do they move on potentially after the vote on these 3 by-elections? There's one in Toronto in University of Rosedale. There's one in Terrebonne, which is in Quebec, and another in Scarborough Southwest. If the Liberals sweep the table, especially in that Terrebonne, I'm sure you were following over how the results were overturned. I think, yeah, like if the Liberals have a strong showing there, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't call the election. Why wouldn't you press your luck? Why wouldn't you push to get a legitimate majority, especially with the specter of Donald Trump and a trade negotiation coming up?
Well, okay, let's just talk about this. So, Terrebonne, yeah. If the other 2 by-elections are certs for the Liberals, one is the University of Rosedale in Toronto. The other is a little further west. Both are very solid. In, what is it?
Scarborough.
Thank you. Yes. And so those are solid. They're not going anywhere. If they don't capture Terrebonne, then maybe Mr. Carney has just more minority government, because he'd have the same number of seats, but he's got to give up one for the speaker. So, you really have to make sure everybody is well and drives carefully if you're going to do that sort of thing. So is it your contention that in that circumstance he would look at the polling and say, look, I'm ahead 56%, I think was the last one I saw. I mean, I didn't know whether to believe it, to be honest with you, because nobody gets 56% approvals. But anyway, let's say it's true, and let's say that you think that he would go for it.
Yeah, I mean, if I was in his position, just sitting on, like you said, where you're on the edge of the knife, right? Like you're not in a position where, you can afford to have 3 or 4 MLAs all catch the flu, or MPs all catch the flu at the same time, especially on like a potential vote of non-confidence. So we're in a position where, yeah, you're on the edge of a knife. You win Terrebonne, I think that puts you in majority territory. You lose Terrebonne, it's a little bit trickier. But even then, like in terms of democratic legitimacy, having that elected majority, I mean, when you're polling at 11 to 14% and your main concern in order to maintain that majority position is the weakness of the NDP, if I was in that position, I would be moving now. I would be, if you win Terrebonne, that's almost to me a sign that, hey, we are in a stronger position than we were just a year ago. Let's move on this. Let's run to the election. But I mean, I'm not a Liberal advisor, but if I were in that position, that's 100% what I would do, just given the fact that you want that majority. You want 4 years. And also, I think in the event that you do get that majority in election, you effectively put a bullet in Pierre Poilievre's career, political career as a leader.
Yeah, that's a different discussion. But yes, that would be terminal for him. Now, I'm gonna pitch this a little differently to you. There are 5 people running for the leadership of the NDP, and they have very different characteristics. You talked about Avi Lewis. Talk to me now about Avi Lewis, and then we'll go over the other ones. Who is he? And he's the one leading in terms of fundraising and therefore presumably popularity. So what's he like? Okay. What does he represent?
So Avi Lewis obviously is, in a lot of people's opinion, the front runner here. He's a prominent activist, documentary filmmaker, and a long time, we'll call him a family of politicians. His grandfather was former NDP leader David Lewis. His fundraising puts him at about 1.2 million, and he is one of the leading climate activists in the NDP movement. You also have, which, is a name that probably will sound familiar to a lot of the viewers of this station, Edmonton Strathcona MP Heather McPherson. She's the only sitting member of parliament in the race. Whether or not her election changes the calculus on that is again, another question entirely. Carney's popularity in Alberta has actually, I think it's gone up, at least from the polls. I don't know if I believe that, but I think it's hard to underestimate Carney in this sense. You've got a union leader, Rob Ashton, national president of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union of Canada. His campaign emphasizes returning the party to its working class roots. So as opposed to like now where you have a lot of professional associations like your teachers and your doctors and your lawyers that dominate the thought process there, a return to the blue collar workers would be a change for the NDP. Obviously, that subsection was not well represented under the leadership of Jagmeet Singh or his predecessors. And then you have Tony McQuail as well, and Tenniel Johnson. They're both kind of, we'll see. I mean, I think they're also ran candidates. But again, to me, I don't necessarily think that any one of these five, if you call the election fast enough, will be able to establish themselves and reestablish the NDP to what it was under the leadership of Jack Layton, who in a lot of people's minds was that blue collar kind of a leader, had that charisma. So
he certainly looked like he knew how to change his own back tire, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very appealing characteristic of him. So look, on the matter, I think it does make a difference who wins. You were saying you didn't think it did, but I don't want to be unkind to somebody I've never spoken to, but there's one of these candidates from Vancouver Island who really, I don't know what they're doing there. It's not a point of view that's even well represented in the party, never mind nationally. It's the Hearts and Flowers campaign. So that's too bad for Tenniel Johnson. And I think if she were elected, it would be very
absolutely. It would be a shock. Yes,
Rob Ashton, he could be to the NDP what Jack Layton was, or he could be a strong no BS kind of guy. Doesn't sound like one of the elites, and he isn't. You mentioned Heather McPherson.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she is a school teacher, I'm not sure, but I know she's been involved in international aid work and so forth, all about Palestine in the last year. There is a market for that, but I'm not sure it's the market that could take the NDP over the top. But here's what I'm thinking, where Mr. Lewis where it would make a difference. He's got brand name recognition. He's got good financing. If he needs more financing, he'll have it. And he can represent that part of the party that is deeply suspicious of the conservative leanings of Mr. Carney. Now, let me say, for people who know what he's talking about, conservative leanings of Mr. Carney is not his predecessor. And much as I disagree with his policies, they make sense in an orderly way. Like, you can see how the one depends on the other. And it may not be working, but at least it shows some smarts and some intelligence. And he's got a good way about him. People enjoy him. That Davos speech was actually not the speech he should have made in Davos at all, but everybody says what a wonderful speech it is. Meanwhile, he's cutting the numbers of the civil service. Mm-hmm. He's tightening up on trade and industry, or says he means to. And these are things that could impact the NDP voter. Above all, he doesn't look like he's able to protect that very strong NDP voting base in the car industry. So what are they actually going to be thanking him for? So I put it to you that there are some weak points in Mr. Carney's overall presentation that would be exploited, opened up, and revealed to the world by a clever NDP leader. And I'm going to make the assumption that, given his family history, Mr. Lewis would be capable of doing that. And then suddenly all of these safe Liberal seats aren't safe anymore. And you say?
Well, I think we've seen that before. We saw it in Alberta. Rachel Notley won the NDP leadership in 2014, became the premier in 2015. I mean, there's always that, threat out there. I just, with the timing again, and this is a strategy conversation, any one of those candidates could potentially build the NDP up to what Jack Layton had it. They've all got, characteristics that they bring to the table, but I think they all need time to do it. I don't think you can become the leader on April the 27th and then 28 days later win an election. I think if the Liberals move fast, they essentially take the element of time away from the NDP. And if you do that, you effectively neuter whoever the leader is. So in the sense, I don't mean like that the NDP is forever irrelevant. I just mean that from a strategic standpoint, if the Liberals move on election soon, that they could potentially secure 4 more years of majority rule without having to use, we'll call it less than savory methods of obtaining full power in Ottawa.
So you are making the assumption then that whoever the new leader of the NDP turns out to be, they couldn't improve on Jagmeet Singh's dreadful numbers in the 2025 election.
I don't want to say you couldn't improve because that is a pretty low bar to begin with. But in terms of enough to pull enough votes away, especially, I mean, like if the polls stay where they are, where you're at, a 56% approval rating, I think he was up plus 20 from Poilievre.
Yeah.
It's just with the windows that it is. And again, we'll see. Like maybe the polls are off. Maybe Terrebonne sends a message. Maybe the Bloc holds out there, or maybe the Liberals somehow pull away with a bigger majority. I think there's a lot that's going to be told in these 3 by-elections. But if the NDP, and again, I think the by-elections happened before the leadership race is up. So, I mean, it's going to be tough to tell with the NDP vote. But unless you get a candidate that gives you that immediate bump, I don't necessarily see a way that if the Liberals move quickly and call an early election, to get that majority, it's going to make it very difficult, not just for Poilievre, especially with and this is something we haven't really talked about. It's a different conversation. Trump, for better or for worse, is a specter over this entire conversation. I noticed there's a lot of anti-American sentiment that has developed from this, and it may just be one of those things where Carney, as a Liberal, is viewed as more of a Democrat in a lot of people's minds, and it will call it Trump derangement syndrome, where Carney's almost, in a way, publicly viewed as the antidote to that, and Poilievre can't come up against it. But just from a strategic standpoint, if I'm the Liberal government and I want power for 4 years, I'm looking at the Monday after the NDP puts their leadership candidate into its position to call the election, no matter who that candidate is.
Well, they're masters at doing that. They did it to Stockwell Day 25 years ago. So, and I'm sure there's a little book in the side drawer there. They pull out what to do when you have just your opposition party has just elected a new leader. Go to an election or meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Rule number 10, subsection 2.
Yeah, we'll have to get Jean Chrétien to comment on that.
Yeah, and he'd be happy to tell you. Look, I think that. I don't think they'll go for it. I think they got too much to risk, but you think that they will? One of us will be proven right by the end of April, you saying?
I think April 27th.
March 27th to 29th.
Yeah.
So then Mr. Carney drops the election writ on
April 1.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's your last word on the subject. That's
my guess. That is that is my prognostication. I could be completely wrong, but if I'm Mark Carney, that's what I'm doing. That's 100% what I'm doing.
Okay. Well, just tell me this. We've got 1 minute left. Naheed Nenshi is the NDP leader in Alberta. Do you think he's wishing that he was part of the fun back there?
Yes and no. I mean, personally, I don't think he's performed up to what the NDP were hoping when they elected him as leader. Whether or not he wishes he wasn't the leader of the provincial NDP and is playing in the federal sandbox, which I think is the question. I can't comment. I know that when people get into positions of authority, they have a hard time walking away from that, no matter what it is, and that the concept of walking away from power to become leader of the federal NDP. I'm gonna, I commute to work every day, and the big thing that we're dealing with in Calgary now is the water crisis. I don't think that's a good look for Nenshi anyways. So maybe he is regretting not going to the federal, but that would just make that a national story as opposed to a provincial one. So I don't know how he's feeling right now, but if I were still in the Alberta government, I would say that I'm happy that Naheed Nenshi is the leader of the official opposition in Alberta, because I don't think he's doing a fantastic job.
And I think you may be right. Josh Andrus, a new face here at the Western Standard, and a welcome one at that. Nice to have you back, and good luck with everything you do, especially in the red tape production. So, Josh, thank you very much. And for the Western Standard, I'm Nigel Hannaford.